Welcome to Inside the Business Mind, the program that takes you behind the scenes where local business owners share their tales of triumphs and tribulations. Meet your hosts, J.C. Rathwell and Kimberly Keller, who have a passion for uncovering the untold stories of success. Join J.C., a seasoned entrepreneur who over the last 3 decades has launched successful ventures around the world. Co-hosting is the dynamic Kimberly, who brings her own wealth of experience. Each episode features candid conversations with small business owners, exploring the highs and lows and offering listeners a backstage pass to the secrets of their success. Get ready as we take you inside the business mind.
Welcome back to Inside the Business Mind. I'm your host, J.C. Rathwell.
And I'm your co-host, Kimberly Keller.
How are you today?
Great, thanks.
Awesome. So who do you have on the show today?
Well, JC, we have a single mom and a growing entrepreneur. She's taking goals and making them a reality in the laser clinic field. She's a proclaimed laser geek and has been in the laser industry for over 19 years. Mother of 2 young girls, director of a surgical import company, and owner-operator of Body Bar Laser Clinic, where she provides services and skin talk for helping men and women alike. Please welcome Crystelle Gordon.
Hey, Crystelle, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is great. So 19 years and a laser geek. Tell me about this. How did you get started?
The original plan was actually med school. I went to Edmonton, went to U of studied organic chemistry, and I wanted to become a doctor.
Ooh.
I applied after 3 years of my undergrad, and I was disappointed to not get into medicine. But I guess call it fate or universe had different plans for me. When I went back to finish the last year of my undergrad in organic chemistry, I started dating a drug rep. And he used to pick me up in the minivan in Edmonton with the case of red wine in the back and the golf clubs. Woo! Because back then, that's what you did as a drug rep. You just wined and dined and golfed with doctors.
Right on.
And I remember thinking, here I am trying to get into medicine, but this is the gig, because he and I used to do that every weekend, especially in the summer. So I finished my undergrad in organic chemistry, and I didn't even reapply to get into medicine. I moved to Calgary, and I became a drug rep. And worked as a drug rep. The industry slowly changed, so don't worry, people don't get wined and dined anymore. And moved to Vancouver and got a call from a headhunter one afternoon. And he said to me, I'd known him for a few years, he said, Crystelle, he says, I've got this really great opportunity. Do you want to sell capital equipment? Okay, what kind? Do you want to sell medical aesthetic lasers? And keep in mind, this was almost 20 years ago. I was like,
wow.
Medical aesthetic lasers, what is that? So I went for the interview, just for fun, and I got the job.
Wow.
So that was, just about 20 years ago, I started selling lasers. But having that organic chemistry background, if you're familiar with organic chemistry, it's the chemistry of carbon. So just about anything around us, other than air and water, is carbon-based. Understanding the why and how things do what they do has always been a passion of mine. So started selling capital equipment, and anyone who's worked in capital equipment sales knows, you're practicing pitches, you're practicing talk tracks, you're going over how am I going to sell this to a customer, how am I going to sell that, and yes, I did all of those things because I did sell lasers for 15 years and I did quite well, but I wanted to understand the how and the why a lot more. So the joke was I'm right-handed. So for the first few years, my left arm was severely abused from me firing on myself, testing out different things. Same thing with bits and parts of my legs, because it really does come down to laser physics and physiology, skin physiology, and understanding the two, being able to explain the why and the how it does what it does when you pull the trigger. So yes, I did well as a laser sales rep. I sold a lot of lasers, but I was also always kind of absorbing knowledge from those who had more than I did, and then sharing my knowledge with those who had less than I did.
Yeah, because with all the different lasers out there and everything, it's as you once said to me, it's really important to know what your laser is capable of doing. So I can see how the educational part would be very intensive.
And it changes, it evolves. It's like our cell phones, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an iPhone user, but the version you had last year isn't current anymore. You need something new. And so it's the kind of industry where new stuff's always coming out. What we can do to skin now, we couldn't do 3-4 years ago.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is very exciting. So that's kind of how the whole laser geek thing came about.
Right on.
Yeah.
And then so you went from selling lasers, and then how did you transition then into the service industry?
So had 2 babies. So over those 15 years that I sold lasers, worked for one company for 8 years and then another company for a little bit less. So one baby was with the first company, the other baby was with the other company. But what it came down to is both babies were raised by nannies. Because when you're a traveling salesperson covering Western Canada and you live and die by the quarter, capital equipment sales, you're on the road, you're not home at night, so I had live-in nannies. And at the time, my husband then had started his own surgical import company. He started it when baby number 2 was born. But I was still the main breadwinner, so I had to go out and do what I was doing while he was building his surgical company. In 2018, we got to the point where his surgical company could kind of financially cover us.
Great.
So I gladly just said, okay, I'm not going to sell lasers, travel, be on the road any longer. I'm going to help him with his company. So again, entrepreneur kind of spirit that he had. We both sort of learned a lot together. It's risky being your own boss. It takes a lot of guts. You make mistakes, you learn from it. But in 2018, I left selling lasers. I did a bit of consulting in that field, and then I started helping him more with the surgical company, but it also meant I could be at home with my girls, taking them to school and putting them to bed every night and that sort of thing.
Yeah, work-life balance is so important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And then things happened in our personal lives where I had to make a change, make a move, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And this is where I think I've made this comment to you before. I wasn't driving this bus. Someone else was. Because I was contemplating going back into selling lasers, buying a townhouse somewhere in Langley or Cloverdale because we lived in White Rock. And then this case of cryogen gas got delivered to my front steps.
What is cryogen gas?
Yeah, it's one of those really cool things that some lasers use to keep the tissue cold.
Okay.
Now, I had worked for that company that provided the cryogen gas 8 years prior. It had my address on it and a doctor's name that I had sold a laser to when I worked for that company over on the island. So I called the company and I said, listen, it was obviously a computer mistake. It was so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so's name on the case of cryogen, but my home address, I was your rep 8+ years ago, got delivered to my front steps. It doesn't explode, but it is a gas. It's a flammable gas. I don't want it in my house, in my front porch sort of thing.
Come back and get it.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is what they said. They said, oh, leave it on your front porch. We're going to have the carrier come and get it. Well, a week later, it's still there. So I called the local rep and explained the same situation to him. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll come and get it. A week later, it's still there, which led me to calling someone who I had sold lasers to, her first lasers when she opened her business, has a business very close to where I lived in White Rock, also has an academy, a laser academy, and so they go through tons and tons and tons of cryogen gas. And I thought, okay, well, the company doesn't want it, the rep doesn't want it, so I called her up. I hadn't talked to her in years, but I'd sold her lasers, we were close once, and I called her up and I said, hey, have this case of cryogen, you need it for the school, I'm just gonna drive it 5 minutes over to your clinic and I'll be done with it. She said, great, and then she made the mistake of saying, how are you doing?
Oh.
And then all the personal stuff started coming out. And then she was always very good at sort of, helping me with my morale and my spirit. So she positively boosted me up, hung up the phone. And then 2 days later, I woke up and I went, wait a minute. She'd always talked about opening a clinic in Kelowna. So I called her up and I said, hey, I know we just talked 2 days ago, but whatever happened with this idea of opening a laser clinic in Kelowna? And she started laughing, and she said, "It took you frickin' long enough. I've been waiting for you."
Hello.
So that was kind of the click moment.
Yeah.
If you know, even 6 months prior, a month prior to that, you had said to me, "Crystelle, you're going to move to Kelowna with your girls, and you're going to open up your own laser clinic," I would have said, "You're crazy."
Yeah. Yeah.
But here I was, doing what I needed to do to physically get us up to Kelowna. And then anyone who's ever sort of opened their own brick and mortar store knows that, okay, well, location's important. So then you go through this process of, okay, well, I don't know Kelowna really, really well, but a little bit. So driving around Kelowna, trying to say, okay, that's for lease, that's for sale, that's for trying to find a place that kind of feels right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took a little bit. And then we found the powerhouse development that was just being built sort of off Clement and Richter in that area. And it was for sale. And it's funny how, and I'm sure other people have experienced this, when you're trying to do something and it feels like you're hitting your head against a brick wall, usually it's because it's not the right path. Right? So certain buildings, certain locations, there's like, no, this is a pain, that's a pain, can't do this, can't do that. There's a clause in the whatever that doesn't. And finally, this one, it was kind of like click, 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 click. Everything was falling into place for it.
And how long was that process then, from when you first started looking to move to finding the right?
Oh gosh, that was years.
Years.
Well, also, hold on, they were building it. They were like the
Okay.
concrete slab had been laid, but that was it. So we had to wait for that process. But we bought the space. They built the shell of it. Then you got to find a contractor, and this is on the tail end of COVID. So, okay, you got a
Okay.
contractor who's got to find crews to do the different jobs. Then you got to find materials, which are crazy expensive at that specific time. And again, you're like hitting your head against a brick wall going, why? And it turns out that, again, on my personal side, I had to go through stuff. Stuff happened, and I'm glad the clinic wasn't open yet. I got to deal with stuff. I also inherited the surgical import company
Wow.
during that time. So
Okay.
again, I'm glad the clinic wasn't open just yet.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, timing is everything. I wasn't driving the bus. I was just along for the ride,
Yeah.
trying to make the right decisions. And then finally, it was October of 2022 when we finally were able to open the clinic and start treating patients.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So during this whole process then, so you were operating and doing the laser import company?
It's not laser import. It's
sorry.
cardiac surgery stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
totally different world. And it's funny because when I first inherited it, I was like, okay, well, this just fell on my lap. I know the business. I was doing it for years, but this is my real baby. I got to get rid of this. So I tried to sell it,
Right.
and nobody wanted to buy it.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody wanted to buy the company. And so again, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not driving this bus. What am I supposed to be doing? And one morning I woke up and I went, wait a minute. I had always tried for us to hire people. But, if you've ever traveled the country, you know that things in BC are different than things in Ontario, than things in Quebec, than things in the Maritimes. So it was hard to find people that we could kind of manage across the country. But I thought, I've got to find a way to add legs to the field, because surgical products, you have to be in front of the surgeons, you have to be in the various heart centers, the cardiac heart centers, which isn't every hospital in Canada, but there are hospitals from Victoria to Halifax that do open heart procedures. So that's a lot of legs. So I was able to find a company that existed already, had their reps carrying their bags, and I just kind of took them on as my agents
Perfect.
to add products into their bag. So
Okay.
they're already in these hospitals, already talking to these physicians, these surgeons. So it's kind of like they've added my portfolio to their bag, and I pay them based on what they sell. So
Awesome.
that started sort of taking care of itself, just as I was ready to say, okay, clinic's open, come on in, people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Good. And so you're getting established now in your Kelowna location. Now, are you a one-person show? Talk to me about employees. And Okanagan bubble is a term I hear regularly. Talk to
Yeah.
me about that.
So a few different things there. There is such a thing as the I don't know if it's just the Kelowna bubble or if it's the actual Okanagan. And we do have patients that come from Vernon and Penticton and Summerland. And you hear about people screaming about how difficult things are and financial times are tough and everything else. But I don't know if you've ever heard of the lipstick index. It's something that was coined, I think it was during World War II, when, as difficult as things got, women still bought lipstick. Because there's something psychological about things are tough. I'm struggling to put food on the table and whatever else, but putting that lipstick on makes me look in the mirror and feel good about myself.
Yes.
And that's really important
Yeah.
when everything else sucks in your life.
Absolutely.
So Kelowna does have a good lipstick index, simply because, yes, things are difficult. And what I'm finding is, if patients used to be able to come in and say, oh, that package of services that I'm going to get over the next 4 or 5 months would cost X amount of dollars, here's my credit card. Now patients are a little bit more weary about saying, okay, well, that's 4 or 5 months worth of treatments. How about I pay when I come in for the services I'm getting, as opposed to buying the whole thing up front? And we're totally fine with that. It's part of, dealing with the economic situation. So patients are still coming in. They still want to look good, feel good. I talk about that proverbial aging clock. I cannot stop it, but I can turn it back and slow it down. And that's what patients want, right?
Yeah.
So they're finding a way to kind of fit it into the budget. You also asked me about staffing. That's a whole other can of worms. Anyone who's ever had to employ people before knows that you can be as passionate about your business and as good at it as anybody else, but if you don't have the right people with you, supporting you, representing you, having somewhat the same vision,
Right.
it
Yeah.
sucks and it affects everything. So initially I started out, did hire someone, didn't really work out her schedule, her, we'll say, priorities and everything else. So then I went back to just being, okay, just me. But we were getting busier and busier, so I had to find someone. So then once bitten, twice shy, you're like, okay, you sit down in the interview process, you ask the typical questions, and the interviewee is going to give you the right answers. That's how the interview process works. So I was really hesitant to go back to the job, okay, send me your resume kind of websites.
Yep.
And going, okay, I didn't screen very well the first time. How am I going to screen this time? And it was actually, and she's my employee now, so I'm commending her for this. It was
Right
her
on.
insight. She's the one who emailed me and said, listen, if I'm going to make this move, because she was working in the industry somewhere else, if I'm going to make this move and work for you, would it be okay if I did some job shadowing? And I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant.
So perfect.
Why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah.
So this girl came out on a Saturday and spent 6 hours in the clinic with me. She didn't get paid. She didn't have to do it. She just, in her words, she's like, I want to make sure you need to make sure that I'm right for you, but I want to make sure this is a good fit for me too.
Awesome.
And then I tell my eldest daughter the story how, so I was doing all the treatments and I like to talk a lot when I'm doing treatments and explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And patients
Which
usually.
we love.
Yeah, patients usually
love
like
to know
it.
what's
Yeah.
going on.
And here's this girl who, 5-10 minutes into it, grabs a pad and a pen and starts taking notes as I'm talking. I told my 16-year-old daughter that, and she's like, oh my God, you got to hire her. So, I didn't tell her to take notes, but, she's taking notes because, yeah, some of the stuff I'm saying, call it, my old sales background, but you have a way, it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. You have a way of saying things that, will appeal to certain people. And obviously I speak differently to a 20-year-old than I do to a 65-year-old, but it's all part and parcel. So she was taking notes, and after 6 hours with her, I kind of said, hey, listen, if you want the job, I want you on board. And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, I love this. I want to be here. So she's still with us today.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So that worked well. And then working with the doctor, well, that's a whole other, he's crazy. They're all crazy. No, he's absolutely amazing. He was moving with his family up to the interior. I've known him for years. He's been in the industry for years because of what I did before selling lasers. I was in touch with a lot of physicians that did this sort of work.
Connections is huge.
Yeah. So having those connections, using them, when we first sat down with him and I said, we're going to do this, we have to communicate. We have to have open communication, call it a monthly thing, a bi-monthly thing. You're not happy about something, you tell me. I'm not happy about something, I will tell you, and we're going to work better that way. But so far, we're really aligned on our vision, how we treat patients, what the goals are, and where we're trying to take the clinic.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you've got a full-time gal working with you, plus
Yep.
you have a doctor and
a few assistants here and then, and there, kind of when needed.
yeah. Yep, great.
Yeah.
Good.
How did you come up with your name?
I didn't. That's going to be, you get into business. If you have to invent that wheel, it's a challenge. I didn't have to invent the wheel, luckily. So the person that I brought the cryogen gas to has a body bar clinic in White Rock. She has a body bar clinic in Coquitlam. So she invented the wheel twice. Or actually, no, once, and then it was easier the second time because she didn't have to reinvent everything. And then it was a matter of saying, okay, well, Kelowna we're doing together, so we're 50-50 partners on it, and it's been amazing. So, to anybody who's thinking about getting into business, surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, especially in the arenas where maybe you're not an expert. You may think you're an expert, but deep down you know you're not. She's done it already, not just once, but twice. So Body Bar is a name that exists. It's a name that has a good reputation. And in Kelowna, we do things a little bit differently just because, I'm that way. But at the same time, it's still Body Bar.
So you surround yourself with people that actually, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
No.
Let other people be the experts, whatever, and take their advice, take the experience that they're giving you, and then implement it into your business.
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you provide, the services that you provide.
So if money were no object, I wish we had all the toys. And when I say toys, I mean, really expensive lasers. We do a whole lot. And it was funny because Body Bar, for instance, in Coquitlam, does a whole lot of laser hair removal. Body Bar Laser Clinic in White Rock is a bit more of a mix, anti-aging, body treatments, and hair removal. I didn't know what Kelowna would be. I didn't know the Kelowna market, right?
Yep.
So it was really a question of saying, okay, well, do we have all the basics covered? Hair removal, anti-aging, some body treatments, yes, okay, let's get going and see where patients kind of lead us, what it is that they want. And that's exactly what's happened. So we've been open 1.5 years now, and turns out that in Kelowna, there's a lot of sun worshippers. There's a lot of people that use and abuse their skin, and it's that premature aging, because, sun, unfortunately, is kind of our #1 enemy when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So being able to turn that proverbial aging clock back with technologies that, remove brown spots, red spots, build collagen, help with the texture of skin, whether it's face, whether it's neck, whether it's chest, arms, you name it, we can treat it. We did get into Kelowna being such a beach community, so we've got some traditional body contouring type technology. We've got also some brand new sort of body contouring technology that builds muscle and such. So to be able to offer patients sort of the whole body
The whole
concept.
gamut.
Yeah. And yes, we do hair removal as well. But it's kind of been a really interesting journey, just seeing, what is it that people in Kelowna want, where they gravitate to. And so far, I'd say about 95% of our business has been anti-aging, which I'm super excited about because that's what I'm most passionate about.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Great. And so tell me something that the everyday person might not know about the laser industry.
Not all lasers are created equal.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's a lot of businesses in Kelowna. I'm a huge believer in there's enough business for all of us. Kelowna is growing like crazy. I do things differently than the clinic down the street, than the clinic across the parking lot. I just do my thing. I don't worry about what the others do. I try and treat patients right, do what I think is best for them. And so far, our biggest sort of momentum has come from word of mouth. And when it comes to things people don't necessarily know is that, well, I kind of alluded to it, these machines are really expensive. The average laser is anywhere from, $110,000 to $250,000. And I call them toys. And we do have a lot of them, but they're not cheap. And then they're not cheap to maintain, and they're not cheap to warranty. And if something breaks down on them, oh gosh. That's one aspect of it. And the other one I have to touch on is it is mind-boggling the number of patients that have had needles stuck in their face, yet have no idea what was put in their face.
Oh.
So the term Botox, for instance, neuromodulators, but there's also Xeomin and Dysport and Nuceiva, and there's a whole bunch of different things. So essentially encouraging patients to ask questions. Ask your provider, what is it you're sticking into my face?
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, terminology. There was only Botox for the longest time.
It's like saying, can I have a Kleenex?
Right.
Which Kleenex isn't in Canada anymore, but can I have a tissue?
Tissue.
Right?
Yeah.
So can I have a neuromodulator doesn't kind of roll off the tongue the same way as I'm here for my Botox.
Right.
But yeah, having patients just ask more questions.
How many men do you have, percentage of men to women?
You'd be
coming?
surprised.
Yes.
You'd be surprised. Men don't talk about it the same way women do. We get together, we gab about it, we talk, oh, I got this done, I got that done, and oh my God, did you see this, did you see that? Men don't go into the locker room and talk about the whatever service they got. But men will go and do a bit of research online and try and find out is there something they can do, and then they'll come in and they'll make sure there's no one in the waiting room, and they'll say, can I have a consult to talk about the bags under my eyes or something along those lines. And yeah, there's a lot we can do for men as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about, we've covered the services, you're established and everything, and you mentioned briefly about your partnership in the beginning. So mentoring or anything like that?
So Jamie and her husband, who own half of Body Bar Kelowna, definite mentors. Funny story, when we were building the clinic, her husband called me one day and he's like, yeah, what kind of phones you want in the clinic and what kind of computers you want in the clinic? And I said, I don't care. I want phones that answer and computers that compute. I'm passionate about the lasers, the technology. So I said, just do what you did in the other two locations.
Right.
So finding partners, like I said earlier, that know more than you know and the things that you don't want to be bothered with that you're not passionate about. If you're going to have partners, do yourself a favor and have some sort of partnership agreement. So we have an agreement in place that covers things as simple as picking what color that wall is going to be painted. We have a process of how we should choose that because there's three of us.
Yeah.
But also the macabre of one of us gets hit by a bus. What happens, right? You have to have that laid out if you're going to be going into business with people. So we have all of that done.
Good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so what are the next steps then that you have in mind for Body Bar?
Well, I'm very passionate about the whole education side of it and having people know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when I say people, I mean technicians. So we're opening up Body Bar Laser Academy.
Oh.
Yeah, so in the clinic, we actually built a space that's large enough to train and certify people. The whole curriculum is been overseen by PTIB, so it's certified, it's accredited. You get a certificate at the end of a 12-week program, and you are a certified laser technician. And you'll be able to, or you better be able to tell me, why are you increasing pulse duration? Why are you decreasing fluence? And so on and so forth, because we're going to drill it into you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when do you anticipate that starting?
Probably get it started in September.
Great.
Yeah.
Really good.
Awesome.
Well, Crystelle, I just wanted to thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And both of you are doing something that I think is really cool because anyone wanting to get into business needs guts, but it is scary. And so you're talking to people that have done it and, probably made mistakes. So being able to learn from others, I think is great for anybody else who's thinking about getting into business. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us once again and getting a glimpse inside the business mind.